Hi everybody. So today we are going to hear from Joe Costello. Hi Joe.
Hello.
So would you like to tell us then from the very beginning a bit about your family background?
Well, I grew up in Bradford, Pennsylvania. Irish Catholic family. There were 6 kids in the family. They had 4 of us right away, and then probably about a 10-year gap, and then 2 more. It was a strict Irish Catholic family. I think talking to my sister now, she thought it was, or she had it tough because she was the oldest, but my father kept her under his thumb the whole time. But when I was about 13, I decided I wanted to go become a priest. So went through the stuff with the church and ended up entering the Catholic seminary in Erie, Pennsylvania, just before my 14th birthday. And this was a boarding school. We went in, we would get out at the major holidays and a couple months for the summer. But it was a very regimented, go to bed at this time, wake up at this time, pray at this time, no talking during meals, just a lot of regiment. And at the time I got there, there were probably about 300, 400 kids there, boys. Out of our freshman class, we started with about 100 and some guys. We ended up graduating 23. And out of that, one person became a priest. So
it was quite a high calling, is it? Quite a high calling to be a priest if only one graduated.
Yeah, and the way it was set up, and it was a diocesan seminary. So we would go to high school at the seminary in the building. Then we would leave and go to a college in town, which was Gannon. And after the first 2 years, you would be moved either to Baltimore or only in New York to others to finish your education, another 6 years. So at that college is when a lot of guys really decided to leave. And that's when I decided that what I saw going on in the church, there were movements going on that started in Pittsburgh that really touched us, a lot of the seniors in my class. And the Catholic Church had great difficulty with that movement. They wanted to quiet it, they didn't want to run it. And after a couple of years of talking, they set up some rules of what they wanted to do. But during that time, a number of priests I knew were basically saying, "Hey, I'm not following the rules; they're right, and I'm, I just can't do it." And that made me start thinking that it doesn't make sense to be in something like a priesthood and then not follow the rules you've got. So I chose to leave. Um, when I left, I stayed at Gannon College and um, got a BA in history and a minor in education. And that's the point where when I left the seminary, I left the Catholic Church. I just couldn't deal with a lot of the stuff I was seeing and hearing, seeing what the people were doing,
Yeah.
and the way they were trying to stop different things. But during that movement, it was like late 60s, like 68, 69, we really felt the touch of God. And different times our class had something going on, and you could feel like we were being touched because people would go down and just you could feel something there.
So the
But
Holy Spirit, when you say move, would you mean that it was a move of
it
of
was a
the
move of
Spirit?
the spirit. It was move of the spirit, and you were touched. You could feel it. You knew it. You knew it was right.
Yeah.
And when they were stopping it, it was like I just can't. The church just can't do this. It's not right.
Mm.
So when I left the church, I left it. I mean, I didn't really go back. I did stop in at a couple of different churches in my life after that, but it was only because I wanted to see somebody who was there. But I left Gannon. I left the seminary. I went to Gannon. I started working because I had to pay for my education when I left the seminary. So I started working at a company called General Electric. Um, we made locomotives. I ran machines for a number of years. After I graduated, or when I graduated, the management came to me and asked me to become a training supervisor, which I had been talked to about different jobs teaching, and the job at General Electric was a little over twice as much, and I just could not stay. I needed money. I had gotten married during that time, and I needed to be doing something more than a teacher. Um, and I worked at General Electric for I think 12 years and did different jobs. I hired and trained probably about 400 people, taught them to be machinists, and the whole life of being, we ran. I worked third shift, so it was tough on the marriage. I was never home. I was working, 6 days, 7 days a week, and it was tough. Our marriage ended up breaking up. Went along for a while longer, got remarried, thought it was would work, and that ended up breaking up. So I've been married and divorced twice.
Yeah.
And the point that I met my current wife, Mary. Mary and I have been married for 42 years now. We had 3 children, 1 in Pennsylvania and 2 in Tennessee. And the when we were when Mary was pregnant with our first son, we got to the point we hated to live in Erie. I mean, it was like Erie gets usually about 100 inches of snow a winter. I don't think John would like that much. They're expecting 4 feet of snow this weekend, so it was different. And we decided that GE was going through a change, and even though it would take some time, they had already laid off about 6,000 people at my factory, and they were talking about laying off a lot more and getting down to about going from 16,000 down to about 3,000. And based on that, Marion and I decided with the weather and everything, we just had to move. Going a lot of this, when you and I have talked in the past, I don't remember how I went from one job to the next, because things are so different now than they were back then. Back then it was You sent out resumes to like recruiters, talk to them on the phone. There was a lot of that going on. And so somehow I ended up with a job offer in Texas. We moved down to I had a factory in Navasota, Texas, which is a real small town. We lived north of there in College Station, Texas, which is where Texas A&M University is. And that was a major culture shock to us, going from snow country in a sense, a little city of about 100,000 people to uh, Texas, different cultural changes, the temperature, everything was different.
Mm.
College, Texas A&M University had about 50,000 students at that time. I mean, everything was different. Like
Yeah.
we would go shopping when they had a college football game on, because that way you could get into the stores. But that was the beginning of our change. And there in Texas, we worked, thought doing a good job. They had me build a new factory about 100 some miles away. We did that. Then the oil bust hit in Texas, and that they cut everything back and brought me back to the main plant. They said, you did a great job, but oh, by the way, we're cutting your salary and stuff like that. So that began the chain of making moves,
Yeah.
uh, where they didn't fire me, but they made it very difficult.
Yeah.
Again, found another position, but instead of being a manager at a manufacturing facility, I got moved into an engineering type position. Um, Worked there doing different jobs, got moved around in different things, like rebuilt the factory, closed the factory in Compton, California, put in new production lines, did a lot of research and development work, and got put on some proposals, especially one big team that we did, and we won a project, and the company disagreed with the government on the way they're going to do it, and poof, the job was gone. I was good enough to be doing this new project, but all of a sudden, we don't need you anymore. Um, and that kind of stuff hurts, and that's where I think God intervened, because you're sitting there, and I was sitting with Mary. We were now 3 kids living in Tennessee, not knowing what we are going to do or where we are going to go, and how we're going to pay the bill. Nothing. Um, Ended up through friends, got a job down in Florida. We moved into Florida again, doing a job, did a lot of different things. Um, Funny story with that is, like, when I got the job and moved the family from Tennessee down to Florida, about the very week that they had moved down to a house where we rented, the company said, oh, by the way, we need you to go up to Pennsylvania and work for a while. So talked to them, and they let me rent a house up in Tennessee, or up in Pennsylvania, and the family just unpacked their suitcases, and we were off to Pennsylvania to work. It was like a 3-month job. Mary still remembers it with the kids, and because we lived in a small town, you smelled the farms and you smelled the chocolate factory that was in town. So that kind of got us into the mood where a lot of our moves, especially as the kids were getting older, like we moved from Florida to St. Louis, from St. Louis down to Texas again, from Texas up to Colorado. And it was tough because every time we had a job break, it was like, it wasn't because I was doing a bad job.
No.
Something changed in the situation.
Yeah.
Was it a God thing that made him change? I don't know. I mean, but the panic you get when you're sitting there with, if you want to call it, responsibilities, and you don't know what you're going to do. I mean, you don't know, what's the economy doing, what's going on, all of those things. And
Joe, did it get easier, or was it just hard every single time still? Because you did relocate over and over again, didn't you, during your career?
yes, we moved. We lived in 8 states in the United States. We made 24 big moves.
Wow.
Most of those moves were, if you scientific people listening, most of the moves were around 700 miles from one place to another. And what that meant was a total break. You didn't have friends,
Yeah.
we'd have a going away party or something like, oh, we'll keep in touch, we'll keep in touch.
You don't.
Never happened. Now, technology is different today than it used to be.
Mm.
Before you left, it was like you put something on in the mail. I mean, there was no internet, none of that stuff
Yeah.
existed. So when you made the break, it was a solid hard break. It tore us up every time. We didn't know what the kids would do.
Yeah.
We didn't know what we'd do. We didn't know who we'd meet. We didn't know what the job was like. And after a couple job changes like that, you get skeptical of what's going on. Um, and it gets tough. And the hardest thing is each move hurt us, but then really worried what it did with kids.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what you do while you're going through it and you worry about the kids, you don't know the way the kids are reacting right now today is not what they're going to be as a grown up. And
Yeah.
that's what you worry about. So it was tough. Um, Now we did learn that talkative people like me have trouble making new friends, but because I was in factory management, running factories, I was forced into the making speeches to my 500 or 600 employees,
Wow. I couldn't do that, to be fair.
socializing with them. I
Yeah.
got into when we lived in Tennessee that have a Christmas party for my supervisors and managers. So we kept doing that. So there's a lot of things that we did, and our kids learned to be social
Mhm.
things. Did the moves help or hurt them? It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
They're now, and it's one of those things you don't talk about.
Mm.
You don't say, "Oh, did the move from here to here hurt you?" You don't
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. No.
But besides the worry of paying the bills, at some point, selling a house, buying a new house or renting, or just all those things you go through. Like example, we left when I got released from my job in Florida, all upset, came home, told Mary, we're crying, and boom, I get a phone call. A friend of mine wants me to move up to St. Louis.
Wow.
It's a God thing. I mean, that's not us. I didn't call them. I didn't ask them. I didn't tell them I was laid off. They found out and they called me. And then we go to St. Louis on one of our house hunting trips. We get up there and it's Thanksgiving. And back in the old days, you didn't find a lot of restaurants open on Thanksgiving. So we ended up having a Thanksgiving dinner at a hotel that we're staying at. So there's different things that, you remember from that. But, we ended up in a very nice house in a very nice neighborhood, in a very nice city, in a very nice school. And our kids adapted. And it
Kids
was,
are quite tough, I think, aren't they? Kids are quite hardy, really. But like you said, you don't know how it really affects in the long run.
yeah. But it hurts you when you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it wasn't your choice either, was it? It wasn't by choice.
Right. But, you never know if the kids even understand what that means.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it wasn't my choice. I left the job. But Dad, you've been doing all this weekend travel for the company, and they said you were doing great. You were going to do this proposal, and you did this, and everything you wanted. Why did they let you go? And it's like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But there were a number of job changes like that. Or when we were in St. Louis working, we bid on a contract. There used to be 9 producers of what we were making. We got cut down to 2. And then all of a sudden, after first Gulf War, they cut it down to 1, and it was you bid a job and you win or take all. And our bid was 0.7 higher than the other guy that won. So our facility shut down. And to tell 500 people, hey, by the way, you've been in business for this long, you've got this many years with company, and we're all losing our jobs.
Wow.
That's
Tough.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Like when that happened, I ended up getting a new position in Texas. Again, in defense running, working for another manufacturer. And it was a story I found out was the president of the company in Florida talked to a chairman of the board in California who was looking for somebody in Texas, and they interviewed me and hired me over the objection of the president in Texas. So it was all, that's not me. If someone said we're going to all fight over it, it was, I just came in, I interviewed, found all this out later on, and that's God. I mean,
favor, isn't it? Favor.
It's, trying to pray and keep yourself going. It's tough.
Mm.
The job in Tennessee or Texas, getting around 500 people, contract went way down, had to shut down the facilities. So there were a number of times like that I had to do those things, and bounced around different jobs like that, different business, different industries. And at the end, we ended up at Bell Helicopter in Texas working. Kids had all gone, started their lives different ways. And once again, did all the stuff they wanted me to do, promised these things, and all of a sudden, I got laid off. They did a major cutback, and I think we were about 3,000 people, and they got rid of about 1,000 in one. So I was released. And again, here I was 64, moved around a lot and out of work. And what do you do now? I ended up finding a job, and then again, through contacts that I didn't know were going on, I got a job as a consultant. And for the next, from 2014 until really last year, I worked as a consultant for the U.S. Army. So again, that's God. It wasn't, I didn't have a college degree in computer science or anything else, but I had experience. Mm-hmm. I got hired because what I knew and how I could do it working in the systems. So, but that's, we can all get bloated about how great we are, how smart we are, and get frustrated if you're not getting something. But for us, it was like, worked hard, I prayed. I can't tell you how many times I got into Job. And it's just, you have to keep trying to do things, but God's got to control it.
Yeah.
Us taking something and say, we're going to move to Florida, we're going to move here. It was, let's see what's next. Our family song is On the Road Again from Willie Nelson. But it's a different situation, but you have to trust.
Yeah. Joe, you mentioned that you got moved over working for the government when you were 64, was
Yes.
it? Consultancy, and then you took ill, didn't you, when you were 65? A year later, you nearly died.
I was doing consulting work, and what it was, we lived in Texas, but I would fly, I would travel, leave Monday morning or Sunday afternoon to go to a place to go consult to help them out. And I was traveling to different sites. I ended up at one site in McAlester, Oklahoma, which was about 100 and some miles north of Dallas. And I was working up there consulting. I turned 65, had a birthday with my son and the granddaughters and everybody in New Jersey. Mary and I flew back to Texas. I went to work that Sunday afternoon. Monday didn't feel good and pretty much got sick. I ended up, I kind of wandered into the office and told the ladies there I didn't feel good, I needed help. They got the ambulance, they took me to the hospital. They contacted Mary, talked to her, she had to drive up, those kind of things. And I left the hospital, went to the hotel for a while, got sick again, and went back into the hospital. What it was, I was bleeding internally. I lost about 5 pints of blood or so. Mary would have to tell you the whole story because I don't remember much of it at all. I mean, it was, I remember like a bit in the piece, and uh, I guess they were going to come in. They wanted to do an exploratory surgery on me. Mary had been told that she had to get me out of there because that hospital would kill me. That was not that good of a place to be. So she somehow got it worked out, and I got a life flight out of there back down to Dallas. And doctor came in, looked at me, told Mary what was wrong, and went in the next day and fixed me. There
Wow.
were staples on inside my stomach to stop the bleeding. And yeah, for what it
Saves your life.
saved my life. I mean, it was one of those um, rough times, but at the same time, you don't really know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, like Mary's there, your husband's in a hospital in McAllister, Oklahoma. So, not knowing even what was wrong with me, ends up the colonel that was running the facility was in the process of leaving. He and I met back up about 3 years later. He thought the story he had heard, I had a heart attack. You know, but it was that kind of thing where, you're sitting there in a hotel room bleeding on the floor.
Wow.
But Mary was able to handle it, and got me back in the hospital, managed the hospital group. However that was done, I don't know. But got staples in my stomach, or clamps, I guess they were big metal clamps to put in. Stayed there. I guess I was in intensive care for about a week, and stayed here for more weeks. Got a checkup. The doctor said, "You look good. Take it easy." I went back to work.
It's crazy, isn't it?
So, but I don't think people could go through that and not go crazy.
Yeah.
So it had to be God stepping in there. We had I don't want to say a crazy journey, but it was like for us, we went through a lot of different things and a lot of moves. And we had decided when we were in Tennessee, really, Mary started checking out some churches in Texas. She knows the name of the person, I don't. But it was it was a Methodist church. It was kind of advanced. And we moved to Tennessee, Methodist church again, Florida, Methodist.
So, Joe, can I just ask you then? So, was Mary Catholic as well, background, or just yourself?
Her family, mother, father, her and her brother were Catholic.
Okay. So you never went to church until you had the children, and then you felt like you wanted to return to something for the kids?
Yes, we felt like with the kids, we had to do something.
Okay.
And sometimes, if you want to call it that, be it selfish, you say, well, if we're attending a church, if the kids are attending school, we attend the church, it gets them social. And then from that, we'll meet people. You do things to kind of help the move.
Yeah.
And but we'd gone different Methodist churches and prayer groups and Bible studies, different things over the years. When we made our big move to Texas, it would have been like 93 sometime. I'm bad on dates of people's names. I don't.
It doesn't matter. That's not important.
Well, but I think in a sense it's important to me because I could not tell you who did what to terminate me at a company. I don't remember. It's like I left the job and boom, it's gone. I did not let it, and still don't let it drag me into anything. It's like it's gone.
So it's a blessing for you in disguise. You don't remember names of people that sacked you, and so there's no grudges.
I mean, you run a factory of 500 or 600 people. There's always conflicts. There's always stuff going on, and I never carried any of that with me. I think that's a blessing.
Yeah.
So it's just different things that went on. But like when we went back to Texas in the early 90s, um, Mary was asking around, found a charismatic Methodist church. We didn't know what that really meant, but we did. We joined, and it was different than the other churches we'd been in. And again, we were involved with stuff. They had church, Wednesday night services, everything. And we um, we got involved working with the church. We ended up getting involved with an Aldersgate Renewal Ministry that did what they called Life in the Spirit seminars. And Mary and I would go around and give our testimony or talk on a certain thing on how the Spirit moved in us. And we were in Pennsylvania. We were in, I guess, Mexico, New Mexico. We were moved around different places and gave something. And it would be, fly out and do it on the weekend and get back home. So we're leaving our 3 kids with babysitters or stuff like that, friends. And so we were doing that for a while. And then it's one of those things, because of my job and travel, I was headed up to Toronto for a meeting. My wife got Charisma magazine, and there was an article in there about a movement that was going on up in Toronto. And I've been a little messed up on dates because I was trying, every time John would say, I was here in Toronto on this date, but it ended up when I went to Toronto, I read the Charisma magazine, I got done with my business, sat there on a Friday afternoon with the people in the company saying, I heard about this church. Have you heard something? Do you know where they're at? All this stuff. They ended up figuring it out by talking to people. I moved my hotel to a place up by the airport and got directions from the hotel how to get to it. They had just moved into their new building, the bigger building from the little place they were. And so I think it was March or April of 95 when I went. And it was a blessing that night. It's like I felt like I did back from the Duquesne movement. It was that touch. And it was like, this is real. I don't think I ever made it up for, the altar call, whatever you call those things. I just kind of sat on the floor by my chair. I don't even remember much, but I ended up getting back to the hotel somehow, got a taxi and a flight to the airport the next morning and flew back into Texas. And Mary will probably hate me saying this, but when I got home, I said, it was real up there. We've got to go. Something's going on. And her thing was, they've got to come down here if they're real. I can't just believe it. Again, God decided to have, it came down, Catch the Fire Dallas took place in like the late summer of 95. And a number of people from our Methodist church went. Everybody got blasted, gone crazy, all that. Cindy Parton was one of the people that went there with us. She ended up deciding to start meetings, soaking sessions at her house on Monday nights. So that Labor Day, that first weekend in September was the first session. So we started attending that, and it was something to see 60 or 80 people crawl inside of a house, crawl out about midnight or so. And we got involved with that. I think Mary and people from the River Center went up to Toronto at least 1 or 2 times. I don't remember. I went back up. I think we took our oldest son with us once. So we were all getting the blessing and getting touched and being told by our church, Aldersgate or Bedford Methodist, that, you guys are all crazy, different things like that were going on. And we ended up leaving the Methodist church at that point. We attended a non-denominational church for a while, but Again, during that period, I got unemployed, so I had to find a job, those kind of things. But
That must have been tough, actually, with the relocating. You're not just relocating your work and your family, but it's your church family as well, isn't it? That
yeah,
must have been hard.
yeah, and Mary was able to stay in touch, and
Mm.
I was blessed with enough money that she could fly down every now and then to, you know, to visit and go with everybody, be at the church and different things. So, I mean, it was tough. Again, you have to put your mindset in. Even back in the late 90s, the internet and everything wasn't what it is
Yeah.
today. So you still had that break. You still could communicate, talk on the phone or something like that, but it wasn't like do a FaceTime on the phone.
Yeah.
So it was still tough, and we still had moves to go. So, but we've never gone back to another church since then. We went around to a few places in Colorado when we moved. I think we tried some in Tennessee, but it just wasn't right. It wasn't the
I think
same.
you get spoilt sometimes and you can't do it that way anymore. We are church still, but we just can't do it a certain way anymore once you've experienced other things.
And I don't say there's times when we thought, well, maybe we should try checking out churches.
Mm.
But it's like, up until about a year ago, Cindy tried to do a soaking session on Facebook, and she just didn't have the communications good enough at her place. So she couldn't keep it up. But we were, getting on Monday nights while she was soaking and doing that as much as we could. But it's technology today is something that just is amazing sometimes, but you can get blessed from the words that are being spoken, but it's really God coming back at you from what you're seeing or hearing or what you're doing. And that kept us moving. I mean, it's, like we made the last move from Tennessee to where we are now in Pennsylvania. And it was really just to be with the kids.
Mm.
And now my whole 6 kids of my side of the family are all within an hour and a half drive of each other. And we haven't had that for 40 some years.
Wow. So it's like you've almost come round, haven't you, to full circle?
We've told people that we left Pennsylvania, we said, we're never coming back. And then 40 some years later, we're back.
Dangerous words.
So now we're here. We have all the kids. Honestly, for me, it's very tough because
Yeah.
I never was around my relatives,
Mm.
so I don't know how to act. It's like my sister her husband died, went through a lot of that. She ended up renting a house a couple of doors down from us. I never had any relative of mine anywhere within 500 miles or so. It's like, she could just walk up, knock on the door, come in, stuff like that. It's different.
Mm.
Thanksgiving's coming up. It's like, okay, how do we do Thanksgiving with my side of the family, with my son, with the grandkids here in town, and my daughter? It's like with him, he does his Thanksgiving. One year it'll be his side or her side of the family, next year my side. And this year is our Christmas, is our visiting time with them. We can visit any time, but this is more of it. We'll go overnight, have Christmas morning type of thing. So we've done that, but to be around my family, it's a little different. Because we could put up with anybody before. If you come to town for a week and everybody could be whatever, and then you just leave and
Reality hits home.
go. Right now, I mean, we know that God's still doing a whole lot of stuff to us. we don't know what it is. It's an everyday thing, trying to go through what's happening, our older bodies, what they're doing to us, how we get things done. But, for me, it's been more of a blessing on the difference between my side. When I grew up in the Catholic Church is you listened to what the priest said, you did the prayers out of the prayer book, and that's it. You didn't even really deal with the Bible much. I even had friends that said, somebody would say, "Are you Christian?" They say, "No, I'm Catholic." So our journey, my journey has been more like I got a water baptism in 95, 94 at the Methodist Church. And my journey since then is like the Bible studies, but that still was leaving me lost. Because I'd be at one church, I'd be talking a lot of King James or whatever. But over the last year or so, it's been more of a, especially with the Hebrew letters and that type of stuff, getting the verse out of the Bible and then actually digging in the words within the, looking at the different passages and how they're different. And not that any of them are wrong, it's just they're different. And then looking at the Hebrew version and trying to dig into the words. And that's been touching me a lot. I'm trying to go through it. I've got a lot of work to do in that area, sense of what I'm going to do or how, or those types of things. So it's more of a journey that don't know where it's going to take. It's more of a, every day we're online, get bits and pieces of that make sense, some that don't. Still digging, trying to learn more the Hebrew letters, enjoy the heck out of it, but still get totally lost. But I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep doing and just see where it takes us. It takes me. And then every day it's more of a, just let God take care of it. I can get mad with the food prices, the gas prices, the political climate, the way people are acting to each other. But I can't let myself get wrapped up in it. I have to let God take care of it and really practice what people have been saying and, let God do it, all of those things. But there's some different things that I guess say they've touched me in different times where I read a book once years ago, and it was a lot of it. One of the sayings he had in there was, you have to look for the miracles of everyday life. And they're I mean, just the fact that you and I are breathing, talking, communicating. You're sitting in England, I'm here. I mean, it's like, or when you look the pictures from the James Webb telescope, I mean, it's so vast. What people thought X amount of years ago and what they see now. I mean, you have to, it didn't just happen. Somebody created this, and our bodies are the same way. If you get into, how your body works, what it does, and all little pieces and pieces that, every second, that's a miracle. And you got to believe that. And that's where I'm trying to live right now. I've talked more than enough.
No, you haven't. You've done really well. Really enjoyed it, Joe. So really your life has been literally relying on the Lord to lead you and to guide you every step, because you've had, like you said, you entered one job thinking it was your last relocation, and it wasn't. For like how long a period was that over? 40 years, 50?
Well, I started at General Electric in 1970, and it was 2014 when I got in consulting jobs. How many years is that?
44, isn't it? I think. So it's a long time, isn't it? Trusting God with that many moves, but you survived. I think it must be harder for you now in a way, because you're in one. Yes, good in a way because you're by all of your family, but hard in a way because you're by your family and you're back in one place and there's no moves on the horizon. I
Right?
know, like,
That
with him.
I don't
Sorry,
want to
Tom.
believe that that's it. It's one of
No,
those, uh, for all I know, God will move us tomorrow. I don't,
you're open.
yeah. I mean, it's one of those, the moves and all the stuff I've said is still hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't, oh, I believe God, and then just smile and go away. No, you got to fight it.
Hard. Yeah. Joe, how was life? You were mentioned to me over the fact that it was you who was the only child that went to the boarding school at 14. So how did that affect you?
I don't know. Like now with my family around, they'll talk about, remember when this happened or that happened and that. And I don't remember.
Because you weren't there.
Well, they don't know. They don't remember if I was there or not. They'll be talking and they'll say something like this, or they'll say, remember when Dad did this or that? I remember bits and pieces, but when I was growing up, he had been in the Marines, he fought in the war, he was a drill instructor, and when he came back to town in Bradford, got married, had kids, he was a rough guy at times.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he was trying to learn how to do things. But remember when Dad did this? I'll challenge him on some of it, saying, I don't remember. When was it? Was I there or wasn't I?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, like with the boarding school thing, it's like, I go to school and then, I think I got out at Thanksgiving for a week, maybe Christmas, and then summer we get off for maybe a month or two. But there's a lot of time in there where I wasn't around, and the kids, my brothers and sisters, I don't know what all was going on. My next oldest brother, he went and joined the Army. Next brother didn't join the military at all, but then my next brother joined the Air Force. None of which from what they say, made my father happy because he was a Marine. He wanted his kids to be Marines. But I don't remember. So it's talking like now we'll talk stuff, and sometimes I'm blamed for, you should remember this. And it's like, I don't, I'm sorry.
Just the way you are, isn't it, as well? Maybe it's a coping mechanism.
Maybe.
Or just the way your brain works. I don't remember everything.
Well, I mean, I've got one son that could tell you if you said on this date, his name's Jarrett, and it was like, Jarrett, what do we have to eat at this restaurant? And he'll tell us. I couldn't even tell you. But I think some of that, like you said, might be coping. And it's like, if I have to remember it, maybe I will. I'm not gonna worry about stuff that I don't.
No.
But it's serious.
What truth then have you learned? Would you say, looking back over your life, what truth have you learned about God?
I think
or walking with God, whatever.
The truth about walking with God is He is in control of all this.
Mm-hmm.
And we, I can't tell you what I'm going to do when we hang up on this interview. God knows, I don't. And it's like that. I can't tell you if my hair is going to fall out or not. It's like there's so many things that, and I think it's God knows and all that. I think it's because the timelessness of God, beginning and all of it, nothing's, I was looking at something yesterday or the day before, and it was saying, man was first on this island 20,000 years ago or something like that. And it's like, okay, so I'm going to live 70, 80, whatever. Where does that compare to 20,000?
Yeah.
Or they'll say, well, Earth was born 3 million years ago. You know, we're just a dot.
Yeah.
The stuff back in the day, see the stars. Now you have an app, you can see stars, but that only looks at stuff that's close. And then you see what the web shows you, the billions of miles away and all those stars. You know, how little we know and how little is happening, but God's got it,
Yeah.
made it, and we're here for a time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you look at the vastness of all of it, it's just amazing. I mean, it's just, you know, like John likes to get into the numbers and all that. It's like, okay, but a number doesn't hit my heart. The words that are tied to the numbers mean something to my heart. And that's the way I am. I don't know, you know, I don't need the research to make me to believe in stuff,
Mm.
you know, or some of the good Baptist people and all that know the Bible verses backwards, forwards, all that. I don't.
Mm.
I can tell you there are words in the Bible that touch my heart, and I'm trying to live to them.
I think it's holding that tension, isn't it, between we're not the center of the universe, but we are very important as well to God. And it's holding that tension, like you said, we're just a tiny dot, a little grain of sand in the bigger picture, but also we are very important as well to God. Yeah, it's very, yeah. So Joe, what quotes, have you got any quotes for me? I love a quote.
You love a quote.
You should know that, Joe. I love the quotes. There's one by, what's his name? Is it Gerzoni or Gerzone? I don't know. I can't pronounce his name.
I couldn't either. And that's out of a book.
Yeah.
And actually that ended up, my brother, there's a picture that I had with that quote, and it looks like the moon with the star. And actually it was my younger brother laid in the snow, took a picture of across the snow to the moon and got that. And the quote that really touched me, I couldn't even remember how many years I've had this. It says, the whole course of each day is filled with endless wonder, which we take for granted, because it all flows so smoothly as the ordinary course of life. But each tiny event, each moment of time is a miracle of creation.
Wow.
That's
Simplicity, isn't it? What?
Yep.
So right now you were retired, and so you're in a new season, aren't you now, of different season?
New season, you know, we're at the, you know, I won't say, you know, between the doctors, mowing the lawn, taking care of my garden, and I have a food garden inside and outside. I have a greenhouse in the house, trying to grow vegetables in the house. We live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is Amish country, which has got farms everywhere. So Mary and I got into canning. We did some before, but here it's just, you know, when you go buy 50 pounds of tomatoes for $9, you can.
Canning, right? I get you. Yeah.
So that, and then whenever they want us or need us, we're with the granddaughters. We have two of them that live here, and one in St. Louis. The one in St. Louis we don't see much, but the ones here in town, that was our criteria when we moved, was we had to be within a certain driving time of that. And that's what we did. And, you know, like, we're not at their house for Thanksgiving, but we have nanny duty, which is what I call it, you know, Monday after Thanksgiving, because they don't have school. So there's stuff like that keeps us busy, that we'll sit there like we are now, almost at Thanksgiving, saying, where did the year go?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
happened? And, we don't sit here doing nothing all day. It just feels like the day's gone before you know it.
Yeah.
And I kind of laugh with your husband, like learning tiling, that, we've tiled so many houses. We moved in, we tiled. We moved in, wood on the floor. We moved in, we painted. But we moved 4 years later. Start off. So we haven't started that. So, but it keeps us more than busy. And, just being like on the vine press, if you want to call it, that's our church. That and what's covered is our church. And that's a blessing to us.
It's ecclesia, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, Joe, bless you very much for coming on, telling us your story. And it is important because you see, Vine Press, we are so, that's just, I say it weekly. That is what we love to just hear, every person, because it's important. We only listen to certain speakers or stuff, but every person's got something to say, something to share that will encourage someone else. So your story will too. You got lovely Mary, blessed with Mary and your grandkids, and you made it through.
And it'll be interesting to compare some of Mary's stories to mine.
Oh, yes, it will. Oh, this will be like Mr. and Mrs. Is it the game show?
Yes. So don't know what she'll say. She hasn't paid attention to what I'm doing.
That's good in a way. It's good.
Yeah, but she's waiting for us to watch it on Sunday.
Oh, okay. Well, Joe.
Recorded, everyone.
Sorry, what was that?
This is a recording.
Yeah, it is. So, Joe, would you like to pray, please, for people about whatever you think, whatever you're led to pray for?
Well, Father God, just touch everyone. I'm sitting here in my study, looking out at the sunshine, blue sky, and clouds, trees, and it's such a miracle. And we have to learn to realize that, and to, no matter what's going on, get ourselves to stop and listen and try to slow down and relax and be involved with what you're doing every day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Joe.
Thank
Pleasure
you.
having you online. Okay, then bye, everyone.
Bye.